Hello everyone, it's Zach here, and again I've just been looking through the forums and looking for things that people might need some extra assistance with and might need some more kind of hands-on examples of in order to understand. So one of these areas I think is key signatures, and just looking at key signatures and determining what keys they represent and how to actually go about working that out. So I'm just going to give you a really kind of chatty, informal example, flashing some on the screen and talking about how I would go through doing it. Now, you can find this exercise at musictheory.net. I'd really recommend it as a wonderful resource for you to go to and to use some of the practice exercises that they have. Certainly, they'll be useful for getting to grips with some of the things that we're talking about in this course. So let's have a wee look at some key signatures. There's a few ways of going about this, and I'm sure there's people on the forums and people taking the course that might have different ways of doing it. I'm just going to show you a few different ways that you could do it, but certainly if anyone else has got any useful tips out there, please feel free to share them with the rest of the group. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that there's an F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. What I would say is eventually you'll get used to that. You'll be able to look at this immediately and see which key it is just by the shape, just by seeing the fact that there's four sharps there. But let's work it out. So this is a little trick that you can use for sharp keys. If you look at the very last sharp in any key signature and raise it by a semitone, that gives you your answer. That is the key. So in this case we've got D sharp is our last sharp. Raise D sharp by a semitone, it gives us E. Click on E, we get the answer right. Okay, now we've got another sharp key here, so C sharp is our last sharp. So if we raise that by a semitone, it gives us D. Now I'm not going to click it right away because I just want to explain that to you. Another way of thinking about this is that the last sharp in the key signature is the leading note of the key. Okay, so C sharp is the 7th degree of the scale of D major. That gives us our answer, D major. So of course we're just dealing with major keys here. Each one of these also relates to its relative minor. So we just said that the last one was D major. Its relative minor would be B minor, and that would also be a perfectly acceptable answer for the question, which key does any given key signature represent? It would be either the major or the relative minor. But just for ease of explanation in this little video, I'm just going to stick to majors because I think people will probably prefer that at this stage. We can go into it in more depth later on or in the forums. So again, I've got sharp keys and I'm going to look at the last sharp here. The last sharp is G sharp. Now, a semitone above that is A. We know that this is the key signature for A major. It could also be the key signature for its relative minor, which is F sharp minor, but at this stage, as I say, we're just dealing with major keys. So that's looking at the last semitone, counting up, looking at the last sharp, counting up one semitone and getting our answer. Obviously, another way we can do this is to be a bit more kind of thorough and go back to the first principles, and we could use the circle of fifths. So what we could say is this has got one sharp, two sharps, three sharps. So that is 3 steps clockwise round the circle of fifths from the key of C, which has no sharps or flats. So if we imagine C being at 12 o'clock on the circle of fifths, and we go 1 step clockwise, well, we get C, D, E, F, G. That takes us to G. That would be our first stop. G, A, B, C, D. D would be our second stop. D, E, F, G, A would be our third stop. And the reason we're stopping at number 3 is because we've got 3 sharps in the key signature. And again, that gives us the answer A. So you can choose one of these options. You can either count how many sharps there are and go round that number of sharps on the circle of fifths. Or you can look at the last sharp and raise it by a semitone. Or indeed, as we've just done here, you can do both and use them as checks against one another. So in this case, we're going to select A. Okay, in this next one we can do both options. Let's run through this a bit quicker now. If we look at the last sharp, we've got A sharp. Raise A sharp by a semitone, we get B. Very simple, very easy. If we wanted to do it using the circle of fifths, what we could say is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 sharps. So we would count 5 positions round the circle of fifths from C at the top at the 12 o'clock position. So if we do that, we get C to G is 1, G to D is 2, D to A is 3, A to E is 4, E to B is 5. So again, both methods take us to the same answer, and that is B major. Okay, so here's a flat key. Now this has just got one flat. Well, if we use a similar example, we can say we're going to go one step round the circle of fourths, because we're dealing with flats here, so we're going anti-clockwise. And if we go one step anti-clockwise round this circle, we can say that this is a movement of a fourth, and this takes us to F, C, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the key signature that just has a B flat is F major. Again, of course, it could be D minor, it's relative, but at this stage we're just going to say that this is F major. So we've just got one flat, we're going to move one step round this circle, anti-clockwise, to get from C to F. F is our answer in this case. Okay, we're back to a sharp key again, and what we see is that the last sharp, because there is only one, is F sharp. A semitone above that is G. Let's use our circular fifths method. We've got one sharp, so we'll go one position round from C. C to G is one position on the circular fifths, G major. Now this one, because it doesn't have any sharps or flats, obviously we know that to be C major. Let's skip through this a bit quicker now. We've got two sharps. Last sharp is C sharp, so that means we're going to be D. No sharps or flats, C. Four sharps. We look at the last one. We've got D sharp, up a semitone, that gives us E. No sharps, C. Now this is being presented to me in a random order, that's why we're getting some repetitions here. Three sharps. Look at the last one. Last sharp's G sharp, up a semitone from G sharp gives us A. Back to C. Okay, so apologies that the screen has all of a sudden changed, but what I wanted to do is show you just a little bit more of the screen and draw your attention to this area that the cursor's on at the moment. And what this does is it allows you to customize the exercise. So what I'm going to say is we're going to stick to just the treble clef for just now, and we're going to have all of our key signatures. I'm going to click on all these options here. You maybe can't see some of what I'm doing, but all I'm doing is showing you that you can use this menu to customize the exercise. So I've just made that a wee bit harder, and what I'm going to do is get rid of that and start the next exercise. So when we're using flat keys, there's another little trick that we can use, and that is really simple, that the second last flat is the key note. We don't need to do anything to it, we don't need to raise it by a semitone or lower it by a semitone or anything like that. We just look at the second last flat, and that is the key note. Now this is only slightly problematic if we think about the key that has one flat in it, because it can't have a second last flat because it's only got one flat. If we just remember that that's F, or remember that we count one step round the circle anti-clockwise because we're dealing with flats, we can get to the answer F. But if we just remember that, we can use this little trick for the rest of the key signatures. So if we look at the second last flat here, we've got a D flat. That's our answer. D flat major is the key signature. Of course, that could also be B flat minor, it's relative minor, but again, we're just dealing with major keys in this example. Okay, so we're going to look at the last sharp here, and this is a really interesting one that I want to show you. We've got an E sharp. Now, E sharp, what is a semitone above E sharp? Well, it's not F, as some people might be thinking, because remember, E and F are already a semitone apart. So semitone above E sharp is actually F sharp. B flat and E flat, we look at the second last flat, and we can say that that's B flat major. I just want to prove this to you again by working through the circular fifths example. Now we're dealing with going anti-clockwise because we've got flats here, so if we move one step round, we go from C to F. That's a movement of a fourth because we're going anti-clockwise. If we go another fourth round, we get from F to B flat, and again, as we said, by looking at the second last flat, B flat major. Okay, so this is just one sharp. If we look at the last sharp in the key signature and go a semitone up from it, this is F sharp, a semitone up gives us G, G major is our answer. This one, as we said, we can just either remember that one flat is F major, Or we can look at the circle of fourths, which is anti-clockwise around the circle of fifths, and we can say, okay, it's got one flat, so we're going to move one position round from C with no sharps or flats takes us to F with one flat. So that's F major. Again, we look at the second last flat here, and we say that this is the key of E flat major. If we were to work around the circle of fifths example, we would go from C to F, moving anti-clockwise, so we're moving in jumps of fourth. We'd go from C to F, which is one flat, F to B flat, which is two flats, B flat to E flat, which is three flats. So again, we've got E flat major here. Again, one flat on its own is F major. So we've done quite a lot of examples, and that's why we're starting to get repetitions here. So I'm going to leave that there, and hopefully that will be of use to people. Please feel free to comment or get in touch and let us know if you would like any more examples of this. But hopefully this has been useful for you in the meantime.